Welcome back to Brighter Morning with Bhoe. We're glad to have you on board. If you want to call us, we have a few minutes. It's 609-6283, 609-6284. Please call and you can say what's on your mind, and if you have a question, we'll be happy to engage you. 609-6283 and 609-6284. Our next guest is Ms. Zakia Uzoma Wadada, and she is head of the Emancipation Committee for Trinidad and Tobago. So we will be talking to her very soon. But you just heard on the news, and you heard me talking with Vivek Charan, two important takeaways from what he said, Mr. Charan, I mean, is that, first of all, if we open back up the economy, thousands of businesses are not going to open back. They just can't make it. They have been devastated by the COVID and the several shutdowns. And that is going to mean also, if you have, let's say, if you have 1,000 businesses that didn't open up, and you say an average of 4 employees per business, you're talking about 4,000 people out of work and 1,000 businesses and families distressed. That's to say the people who own the business. If it's 2,000, well, it's twice that. And you begin to see how the multiplier effect of the COVID impact is on the economic and financial system in the country. The other thing is that you heard from both Vivek Charan and Neeraj Tiwari, my son, who is CEO of Amplia. And the private sector is pushing this idea of people being vaccinated because they know that you cannot have a thriving economy without vaccinated people in your country. And you have the additional problem of vaccinated and non-vaccinated that you have to manage in the workplace. And that is going to present a certain amount of difficulty and problems. And this is something that we're going to have to face head on. The whole world is facing it. England is facing it. France is facing it, and they are taking decisions about it. And the United States is facing it, and they are taking decisions about it. And we are going to have to take decisions about it too. We want to talk to some of the union leadership in the country. I'm going to put out a call to Mr. Roger, who is head of NATUC, and see if he will come and talk about a number of issues here. I noticed on the news that the trade union movement is uniting to come together to uniting and coming together in order to basically put a stop to what they say are negative policies of the government. So we would be prepared to talk with him and see what he's thinking, what he's planning, and what is likely to happen as we go forward over the next 2 weeks. It is important to talk to all stakeholders. Government is a major stakeholder. The opposition is a major stakeholder in the parliamentary system. It is important to talk to business. It is important to talk to the education sector. It is important to talk to the NGO sector, and it is important to talk to the trade union sector, which represents the largest body of workers in the country when you take them collectively. So we will proceed with these issues. I want to raise one international issue that should be of interest to us, and that's the issue of what is happening in Hong Kong. As you know, there is a new law, a national security law, that has been established in Hong Kong, and hundreds of people who have been detained have been charged under that law. And we had the first test case last week, and the sentence dished out yesterday. And I think that this is the first case under that law in which this young man, 24 years old, has been put to jail for 9 years. And this is something that we're going to have to watch in Hong Kong. It is a very important thing because it has to do with the ethos and the character of Hong Kong. I mean, Hong Kong was a major financial center in the world. I don't know if these decisions which interfere with the democratic process in Hong Kong are going to impact on the economic system there. And if money moves from there, where is it likely to go? In what country? You know, one man's loss is another man's benefit. And money goes wherever it is welcome. And we need to look at the financial implications of what is happening to the democratic process in Hong Kong. And we need to look at the trends in Hong Kong also to see the extent to which the big power of the Chinese government over this dependency, which they inherited from the British, how that power is going to be exerted. The Chinese have issued a warning to the U.S. government in a recent meeting about a week ago, in which they indicated to the U.S. that they want no interference on matters having to do with Hong Kong. They want no interference on matters having to do with Taiwan, and they want no interference in the China Sea, which they see as their geopolitical domain. So that there's a kind of standoff emerging, and Hong Kong is in the middle of that, and we will see how that unfolds. Okay, it's important to keep in touch with what is happening in the world. You know, a wise man said a long time ago that, you know, in the whole business of climate and weather and the whole business of how interconnected the world is and how globally interconnected the entire system, which affects us as citizens in the world wherever we live, is. He said that the flapping of the wings of a butterfly in Peking can change the weather in Rio de Janeiro. And what he meant by that is that things have a way of being more connected than we think, and that one little action in one place have unintended effects and consequences that we would hardly anticipate when you look at that one event in isolation. So we in little Trinidad and Tobago, as we strive to live and to make a living and to engage each other and to build a society under conditions of really stressful, stressful assaults by all of this COVID pandemic worldwide, would do well to look at what is happening in the other parts of the world, see what is happening there and learn lessons from it, take notes on what is happening so that we can see what the future portends for Trinidad and Tobago and its people. Okay, we are not isolated in the world, and we are well connected everywhere. And more than that, the technology of today makes it really one ubiquitous, multifaceted space because of that cyber connection. Okay? Things happen in an instant in one place and can have an impact just as quickly in another place. But I think we have our guest on the line. Is that correct? Do we have our guest now? Okay, so I want to welcome Ms. Wadada to Brighter Morning with Bhoe. We're very glad to have you. How are you?
Thank you, Bhoe. Thank you for inviting me to be part of. I'm hearing an echo.
Okay, can
Yes,
you?
thank you for inviting me to be part of this morning's show, and welcome to your viewers.
Yes, and we welcome you. We're glad to have you because you are head of the Emancipation Committee and you are involved, you are leading the celebrations of Emancipation Day on August the 1st. You have started that process already. You've been doing some things. You have more things going on. Could you tell us a little bit about it? But perhaps before you go, before you start with that, I want to ask you about Leroy Clark. I know that he not only was I would say a very, very significant artist in our country. I've had a few conversations with him. I wouldn't say many. I've had a few conversations with him, and I know some of his work. And I have a little understanding of his thinking. But he was, in a way, a kind of wise man, and he spoke sometimes in very poetic terms and metaphorical terms, and a lot of his painting was in fact metaphorical, but it was rooted in the African essence of his being and his consciousness. So I don't know if you want to pay tribute with me to him before we go on to the discussion. Would you like to say something about that?
Almost definitely. We must acknowledge Leroy for his work. He was a phenomenal artist and brought a particular, what you would call it, a particular genre, I suppose, of art to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think that we have seen art like his here in our own country before he started to really, put on paper what came out from the depths of his soul, of his
Yes.
being, of his spirit, and allowed us to take that journey with him through his art. So Leroy was also a poet and writer, so I think that's why his language, when he spoke and when he write, was, as you say, very poetic. You had to take time to read Leroy's work, and to really, again, as with his art, go really deep into the messages that he keeps trying to, that he had kept trying, and I suppose would keep trying through the work that he has left behind to get to us, to share his wisdom, to share his understanding, to share his passion about being African and wanting those of us, or his African brothers and sisters as well, to understand what that meant, and to openly embrace themselves as Africans. And of course, for the society to understand that African story as part of the story of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. Well, we pay tribute to him. We mourn with his loved ones and all those
Indeed.
whom he touched with his life and his
And
work.
so
All
many,
right.
yes,
And we
yes. One
and
conversation with Leroy meant that you would never forget him.
forget him.
There
That's
was
true.
not a normal, casual conversation. He
Sure.
always created an impact once you had an opportunity to meet with him, talk with him, share a moment with him. And we give thanks that we lived in the same space and were able to share those moments with him, even as we say, grant wish that he is grant, eternal rest and peace. Although in our tradition as an ancestor, you still have to work because you have to take care of those of us who are here. Continue to watch over us here in the land of the living, but we wish him a peaceful transition and, as you say, condolences to all his family and loved ones.
Yes, I join you in that, and I acknowledge his worth and his value and his contribution to art and to Trinidad and Tobago, and indeed to art everywhere because of his contribution. So let us talk a little bit. Tell me about what you are doing, what you have been doing, what you are doing, where you're going with your celebrations for emancipation. And I know you are constricted by the fact that we are living with this COVID reality. Tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
it.
Okay. So this year, the 2021 Pan African Festival of Trinidad and Tobago has been, as last year, a challenging one for us to pull together. Have been so many uncertainties with respect to, resources, with respect to what you can do, what you cannot do. But we remain determined and resilient with respect to the hosting of this annual commemoration of the emancipation of African persons from enslavement. And we start, as we normally do every year, we started this on the 25th of May, known as African Liberation Day or Africa Day in some countries. And this is the normal time at which we would start the presentation for the current year. So on the May 25th, we did have our launch. And then on the 19th of June, we moved on to our annual Yoruba Village Drum Festival, which since we have started to do it online has been gaining quite a bit of popularity, not only locally, but across the globe, because, now being online, you are able to trans our work throughout um, different countries. So we also, on the 20th, we had a launch of the Kwame Ture Memorial Lecture Series. And what made our lecture series so special this year is the fact that 25 years after Kwame Ture himself had returned to Trinidad, was allowed to return to Trinidad, and spoke at the lecture series that has always been a part of the annual celebration. This year, we were fortunate to have his sons, both Bokar Ture and Alpha Ture, be part of this year's the panel discussions that form
Okay.
part of the lecture series that has now been named, of course, after his dad. This was done a year or two after he came to Trinidad. So, that was a very special time for us, to really be reconnecting and sharing conversation with Alpha's sons and to realize that his revolutionary spirit continues to live within them. So following the lecture series, we've had a number of youth workshops. We didn't do this last year, but we did decide to do it this year because the Youth Day was a major part of the Lejiasu Omawale Emancipation Village. And last year were not able to cater to the young persons. So this year we've been having online youth workshops. In fact, the final one will take place this morning when we're going to do dance with them. So that has been a wonderful new experience. We have also, in our effort to continue to create a space for the micro entrepreneurs who will be part of our festival every year and who we work with, we do training workshops with them and so on. We did have a virtual pop-up market, another new experience. Last year we just did an online market, but this one was a pop-up market because it was live. So people can be right there asking questions about the products, expressing an interest and so on. So that was really another novel activity that we did this year, and we are very proud of that. And we are now ready to go. We are kind of winding down as we come into the last weekend. So tonight, Friday night, we have our Calypso concert, which is being done to remember our dear sister singing Sandra. So we
Okay.
would be speaking with her the United Sisters, her family, her sisters, and then those little ones who she considered her children. So we have Karine Ashe, Makeda Daira, Stephen Marcel, along with Marva and Tigress. And we will be talking about Sandra and also playing the songs that they did in tribute to her when we had Shikamu Sandra. And that was our opportunity to pay tribute to her
Pay
in
tribute, yeah.
2017. Yeah, so that's
Yes.
going to be a beautiful event. I don't know if you want me to go ahead or you want to ask me anything
No,
still. Because we,
what I'm seeing though is that, I mean, you can't do it physically anymore, but you have
that's right.
really made
Found a
some,
way.
yeah, you've really made
Yes,
some good connections online
indeed.
to
Yes,
bring people together, and more than that, to expand. I would say because of the way online works,
that's right.
you can expand the consciousness by the kinds of
That's
things
right.
that you bring to the public space through the internet, you know.
Indeed,
And,
indeed,
and
indeed.
I notice what you are doing. You are bringing the music, you are bringing the culture, you bringing the creativity, the entrepreneurship. And I
Yes.
find that very formidable. I find that good,
Yes, and
you
yeah,
know.
and go on the conversation because what we have done since we were not able to do, new recordings and so on, and we are using a lot of our recordings that we've had from before, but we've been having conversations with the artists, which is also bringing to the fore, new understandings and appreciation of them and their devotion and commitment to their work. So like yesterday we did a people to people forum. It was mixed with art as well, but we were talking actually, this was a really interesting event because it is going to be premiered on Facebook on Emancipation Day, but we actually did the recording yesterday and we
Yeah.
had a conversation, with over 100 participants, with people from all over the globe, the continent, Europe, United States of America, and we were talking about the decades of people of African descent and also reparative justice. So on Saturday night, we're going to be doing Unity Reggae Concert, and we're going to be up again close and personal with the reggae artists as we pay tribute to the Mr. King and King David, two of the veteran reggae artists who have given us amazing music that is designed to educate and build the consciousness of others. And on Emancipation Day, Pan Night and jazz. And again, we will be speaking with Sharon Phillip. We will be speaking with the chairwoman of Pan Trinbago. Again, because now we know August begins Pan Month. So we've been able to
Yes.
put all of that together. And then we have on Emancipation Morning, we would have our normal Emancipation Day um, commemoration to our ancestors. But again, it will be online. So we have
Okay.
quite a bit of work to do still in the next few days. But it really fills our hearts to be able, even through this medium, to continue to bring this important, critical commemoration. Not only for
Yes.
ourselves as Africans, but it's a commemoration that is important to human beings. It's important to us as humans, and therefore important to our country, to the world, and therefore we are happy that we are still able to
Well,
do it.
talk about that a little bit.
Yes.
You said that,
Mhm.
you know, emancipation is not a concept, and the celebration is not something that is limited to Africans. It's something for the world.
Indeed.
It's something for our country. Talk to that concept a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, imagine we were still living in a world where Africans were enslaved, you
Yes.
know, even in this our own country. So the fact that we would have struggled as African people to liberate humanity from the
Yes.
scourge of
Yes.
enslavement. Not
Yes.
just liberate ourselves, because our enslavers, they were enslaved in their own way, because for them to be able to, what you would call, dish out that kind of treatment to another
Human
group of
being.
human
Yes.
beings.
Yes.
Something had to be going on in their minds, and therefore we are saying that the liberation of humanity from enslavement, both at the level of the enslaver and the enslaved, is something that is critical and for all human beings to commemorate. We say celebrate, yes, because it is something that, we should feel good about, but it is something that should have never happened in the first
Yeah,
place. So
I
I
agree.
like to use the word commemorate rather than celebrate. We should
Celebrate.
not be celebrating the fact that we had to fight, so hard just to maintain our dignity or to be recognized as humans, to find our own space. And the battle continues. The struggle for our freedom took place over a period of 4,500 years, because people must know that from the first chain that was put on our hands and our feet, from the first time that we were put on those ships, we have been fighting to be free. Some of us chose to suicide rather than enslavement.
Yes.
People, Africans fought every step along the way and along that journey and lost their lives in trying to be free. And it took 500 years for that emancipation, or at least the physical freedom to come. But we are now in the 183rd year of the emancipation, particularly within the British colonies. But you know that the journey of emancipation is still on. The
Yes.
journey of emancipation continues. And once we are living in a society where we have a major component of that society being negatively impacted by a historical experience, it is a concern not just for the group, it is a concern for the country. Because some of the ways in which that trauma, or because nobody gave us counseling, nobody said, okay, no, we have to help these people repair themselves, whether it be materially, with the to make up for the years of free labor, whether it be emotionally to make up of the scars of watching sometimes your families being tortured, you yourself being tortured, your woman on being raped, all those kinds of sordid and difficult experience that became part of normal life. Who helped us to repair or heal
Of the
from those
damage.
traumas?
Yes.
And we not to assume that because 183 years have passed, you remember this is just 500 years of that kind of enduring that kind of trauma, and it went from generation to generation, and it still continues, that trauma, from generation to generation. We've had
Okay.
some Kunta Kintes who have been able to fight and say, yes, I'm African. No, you cannot conquer me. You cannot conquer my spirit. We've had Kunta Kintes. And therefore, we've had those who have been able to rise. We've had those who have just said, listen, I'm just going to be humble. I'm going to do what they say. I'm going to just copy them. I'm going to try to be just like them so that I can survive. And then it have those who just say, listen, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So all of these different manifestations of ourselves continue to exist, and it speaks to a people who are not whole. It speaks to a people who have been negatively impacted by historical experience, and that is going to be manifested in so many different ways, which people turn around and say they what less, you know they're lazy, they hate themselves. All of these, we want Africans prior to enslavement, proud, amazing people who had developed empires and societies, and they lived, you know,
Yeah.
and had organized their societies. Of course, in every society, you have challenges, and you have, you may have had tribal differences that might have been, those are part of human living. But we were proud people. We were a people with a rich history. We were people who had a close connection with nature and therefore had a strong understanding of spirituality, as all other indigenous peoples that walk the earth. You know? So that dehumanizing of us that continues to today, where people still think something is wrong with your color, something is wrong with the texture of your hair, you're not right, something have to be wrong with you because you are African. That exists today. It's been so the same way that there have been trauma passed on from generation to generation. The psyche of the enslaved, the psyche of the colonial master, that still persists in how we govern ourselves, in how we are perceived. It persists in how we police our country. And not only here, we have seen it all over the world.
All
And
right.
therefore, the struggle continues. And it's important that all humanity, as you say, continue to be part and support this struggle.
Okay, thank you very much for the things that you said and the contextualization over history of
Yes.
some of the issues that have emerged and the diversity of responses within the community
That's right.
in order to deal with survival and sustainability, etc. And
Yes,
I
indeed.
appreciate I appreciate the complexity of the texture of what you are arguing, okay? And the celebration part that I mentioned really has to do with the celebration of freedom.
Understand. Of course.
And that came, the signal, the symbol of emancipation as freedom.
Indeed.
And
Oh, yes.
and the end of the concept of enslavement, although racism never stopped, subjugation never really stopped, exploitation never stopped, victimization never stopped, and so we navigate to try
Indeed.
and do this.
Yes.
But I want to ask you
Yes.
something, and it's very important for a society like ours. I want to ask you this, it's important. You know, having a racial consciousness, a consciousness of yourself as an African, understanding your history, understanding a philosophical view of the world, understanding the journey that has been traveled and the challenges that you are facing. Having that racial consciousness has nothing to do with racism, does it? It's a
Of course not.
No, and I want you to. The reason I'm asking you
Yes,
is
exactly.
because
I
I
know.
want people to understand. All
That's
right,
right.
racial
Yes.
consciousness is
Yes.
not racist. All right, racial consciousness is about trying to have a sense of self and a sense of wholeness about self
Right.
and a sense of connectivity with others like yourself, because you might have something that you share or want to share. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, man, know thyself. Whether you be African, Indian, Chinese, Caucasian, we
Anybody?
have a response. That's what makes us whole, you know. So therefore, if we have a group in our society which has been denied its language, which has been denied its culture, which has been denied the essence of its being, then we have someone that we need to be very concerned about, you see? So, and therefore we have to make effort to heal, you know, and you know, I sometimes I can make this analogy that could maybe be specific to Trinidad and Tobago, and others may have made the same analogy. You know, if I'm a parent and I have 4 children and one of them is severely injured, I have to spend some time helping that child to be well, you know, and that responsibility is for each child. We want to make sure that each child is well, but each child might require different things to be well. And it's okay to provide each child with what is required because we want everybody to be well. Because if we are all well, then we have a whole society. Then we are building a harmonious society. So we cannot, it is, you know, there's something wrong with focusing on one of your children or 2 of your children who may not be well. You know, we have to make all well so that we can have a whole family. It's the same way that I perceive how we work in our communities. If it is we are not working on extending our resources to ensure that each community is well, so that we're going to be talking about underserved communities. Why are our communities being underserved? You know, because so that we take some money, less money on spending on national security, serve our communities so that we would not have to spend money on national security. You know,
Yes,
community
yes.
development, culture, arts, these are the healing balms of any country, of any human being.
And
That's what that's what shapes behavior. That's what makes people, respond and have this consciousness of nation and so on. But it has to be done one community at a time.
yes, and it's anticipatory and it's preparatory.
That's
All right,
right.
and it's redemptive before
Indeed.
before difficulty arises.
That's right.
Okay, and what you're
Indeed.
trying to do is to prevent the difficulty. So
Indeed.
I will close this part of. I'm going to take you kind of outside Trinidad and Tobago now, but I'm going to close this
Okay.
part of the conversation by saying
Yes.
that emancipation has to do with the freedom and liberation of people of African descent from the horrible system of enslavement. But it represents something that every human being can embrace because it actually has to do with human freedom and the desire of every people everywhere, every person everywhere, to be free and to be able to self-actualize as an individual and a community. Would you take that view?
Us being coming into this space, into this space, well, whatever context it fits into the universe, we didn't come here to serve others, and each of you said came here to have an experience that actualizes themselves,
Yes.
help you to grow both as spirit and as flesh. And the challenge is that nobody wants to be denied the right. Not only, you see, it's not only about freedom to do what you want, it's just freedom to be human,
Yes.
and therefore each individual that walks the earth demands that, needs that. And we've had people fighting for it. Not everyone was fighting, let us say, for freedom for enslavement. We've had people fighting to the vote. You've had, human beings have continually struggled to fight for the things that they think were their rights as part of their being. And therefore, the word emancipation, means that. It means that we are able to be who we are, that we are given the opportunity to grow as the special human beings that we are. And the divine energy of life, they create different kinds of human beings,
Sure.
or different
Sure.
human beings evolved. And one of my own personal says that beauty lies in variety. If we
Yes.
all looked exactly the same, walked the same way, we had everything was the same, what would make it a beautiful space to be? If all the trees had the same exact flower and the same exact leaf, what would make nature beautiful? So the variety that exists in the universe is what makes it a beautiful space. And we have to understand and appreciate the fact that we have, the expression of ourselves and of our humanity in this physical form and in this physical space is part of what makes us a beautiful people. And
I,
if we learn to love each other and appreciate each other and share and harmonize, that is desire, that is the beautiful world, the Orun. But at the same time, we think this power play, this but in equity, you have a house with 90 rooms that you can't even, some of them you might never go into, and then somebody else has nowhere to live.
yeah.
How do you live in any house with 90 rooms feel? You have 500 cars. What is that all about? What does that mean? And I know I'm exaggerating a bit, but we do know we have people with that kind of wealth. They own a whole island, they own this. And then we have people who don't know where the next meal is coming from.
Yeah.
That is what we have to emancipate the world from, that
The
inequity.
the
There's need for a
inequity
new social and economic
the
order.
the inequity is a real problem, and I want to say something to
Indeed.
you. I want to say something to you that has to do with the hemisphere. That's to
Yes.
say, the Western Hemisphere. As you know, the hemisphere was basically I mean, the Amerindians lived here, and you had
Yes.
the imperial powers come here, and then you had enslavement as a system,
Yes.
which
Yes.
brought, so basically you had what you might call the creation of new societies here based on this notion of enslavement. And today, even today, 2021, the Americas, the space that is the Western Hemisphere, is the most unequal region in the entire world. That is no exaggeration. It is the most unequal region in the entire world. And the issue of inequity, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, not just in the Caribbean, but in the entire Western Hemisphere, and in the world system, as we are seeing it now with COVID, has become an urgent issue to manage as we go forward if we are to have a world of relative peace. So that is an issue. And so I just want to share that with you and to say that in many of the sentiments that you express, I am at one with you in spirit. And I want to take you to something now called, by the way, before I go on to this, would you have any objection if our station, MCTV, were to talk with you about carrying some of the programs that you are doing online? Would you have an interest in that?
You mean in MCTV carrying some of our programs? No.
Yes. All right.
No, it's
so
for the nation. The more people see it, the better it is for us.
No, it's good because this is a television station and a radio station dedicated to national culture and regional culture. So we do not import our programs from outside. They are all made here. They are all made here. So this is very valuable to us. And it's very valuable for us as a bridge to the society and to show the diversity of Trinidad and Tobago and the entire region. So if you would agree, someone will call you and we will try to make some of those programs available for the public to see. And our reach is pretty good. People are learning the station and they are coming on now and they're watching and so on. But I want to connect you now to Black Lives Matter in the United States. All right? We've had a situation, Black Lives Matter has come to represent a connection with a backlash against white supremacist thinking in the United States. And I know American history pretty well because of how I've done my work academically and intellectually. And you had a system there of enslavement. Emancipation came here in 1838, but it took a civil war in the United States to get rid of slavery, and that was not until 1865, you know, and so it was much, much later. And even when slavery and the slave system was abolished in the United States after the Civil War, you had a situation in the United States where there was something called Jim Crow. And that had to do with the fact that in the federal system of the United States, states had a lot of powerful rights. And many of the slave-owning societies in the southern United States had a system of separatism, a white world and a black world. And this evolved, but more than what they did was the mentality. And that mentality persisted and continued. And this Black Lives Matter, which has to do with police violence against black people, really has to do as well with the thinking that allows that to happen. Can you comment a little bit on that and what would be your thinking as a person from Trinidad and Tobago who is connected with the consciousness behind a liberation of African people everywhere? how you would connect with something like this. And I'm sorry to say this, but we have a short time now. I'll have you on
Yes.
again. I'll have you on again after emancipation. We'll have an honest
Sure.
discussion
We need
for
to
the
talk.
sake of the
Yes.
population. Yes.
That's
It's
right.
important to
Yes.
have these honest discussions,
Important.
honest
It's
and
how we will
respectful
grow.
discussions.
Indeed.
And
Most
so,
definitely.
so I want to ask you,
Yes.
how would you
See how
connect with that?
quickly.
And we're going to have to
Yes.
close
Yes.
up now, okay?
Yes. You know.
So I'm
Bhoe,
giving
I
you
think
1
what is
minute
most
to deal with an
1 minute.
impossible,
Yes.
impossible
Yes,
situation.
I know. But what I think is critical about what you have said, you had to put it in a historical context. Because people keep thinking and asking, why do we go back there? Why do we go back into the history? If we do not understand the history, then we will not understand the present. The present is just a process of transition. The past leads to our future. And if we don't understand the past, then we cannot chart a journey to the future. And we cannot fix the challenges because we do not understand them. And therefore, I want to use that the whole issue about emancipation, Black Lives Matter, about the whole issue of our humanity as people walking this earth. We must know and understand our history. Once we learn that, then it becomes a much easier process for us to be able to appreciate what it is we are facing today. What does colonial legacy mean? What does we mean by discrimination? What does institutional racism mean? These things continue to exist because it is that is what we have, what you call inherited from the historical past that the world has experienced. And I love the point how you made the point about the Americas. But then we also have challenges on the continent where the people went through the same kind of process.
Okay, I thank you very much for that
It's,
response. As I said, we're going to have you on another day.
indeed, yes.
We will talk about some of these issues, not necessarily Emancipation Day, but these
No,
these
about
big issues that have to do with human beings navigating their space in the world, and the
that's
power
right,
structure,
indeed.
and within the power structure that we are dealing with in the world system. So I
Yes,
want to thank you.
governance, very important.
Yes, I
Yes,
want to thank you very
yes.
much, Ms. Zakia Uzoma Wadada, head of the Emancipation Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, celebrating emancipation and its impact in Trinidad and Tobago and connecting with the world, Trinidad and Tobago with the world. And I want to thank you for this conversation. I want to thank you for watching and for listening. Stay with us. We are not going to be here Monday. It's a public holiday. But we are going to be on here on Tuesday. And we are going to have two important guests for you. So look on Facebook and see who those are going to be. One is from England and one will be from Trinidad and Tobago. So we welcome you on Tuesday morning to have a discussion. My name is Bhoe and this is Brighter Morning with Bhoe. We thank you for watching and listening, and we hand over to the news, Chenille Alsuran.